everyone. I'm Linda Nickell, and welcome to the Happiness Hour. Every week, I invite photographers to meet here to connect, inspire, and create. And if you'd like to join us, you'll find the schedule for upcoming sessions on my website at lindanickell.com. My guests share their photography tips and insight into their creative journey, and they inspire us to try new techniques to improve our photography skills. Tonight's guest is Melody Lytle. Lytle. Melody is a wildlife photographer and workshop leader whose photographs showcase nature's most precious creatures from all over the world. If you're interested in joining her on a wildlife photography trip, you can connect with her through her website, karenmelody.com. And if you're on Instagram, you can find her at Melody Lytle. In tonight's presentation, photographing things which fly, birds, bats, and insects, Melody will share some of her favorite photographs and a few tips that will help you photograph those fast-moving subjects. Welcome to the Happiness Hour, Melody.
Thank you, Linda. What a nice voice you have. All right,
Thank you.
Here we go with the tech.
All right, so y'all just cross your fingers and we'll give her just to get connected here. And Melody, I know that you're going to do a little bit of intro for you, but if I missed anything, feel free to jump in and include that.
So. That was a beautiful introduction. Let me tell you about myself slightly. I started in fine arts, actually. My bachelor's is in fine arts, and later I went to graduate school in biology. So I'm kind of pre-adapted to bird photography. I'm a longtime bird watcher. I'm a nature lover, and I don't just photograph birds. I photograph lots of things, lots of wildlife, and the occasional plant, the occasional landscape. I love flight photography. All right, so we're talking about things that fly. We'll start with birds. I think that's what most flight photographers want to shoot. And birds in flight are absolutely beautiful. I'm going to give you plan A and plan B. Now, plan A is not so practice anymore because we have cameras that follow, that will track a moving subject in a way that's much better than we had in the past. But for plan A, you set up, and this is usually done from a blind, by the way, so that you can watch where the bird is staging, where the bird's going to take off, and where it's going to land. And you set up a pre-focused space where you focus and aim your camera, and the minute the bird twitches where it stages, you start shooting, shoot multi-shot. So you're sitting in the blind, you know that the bird starts its flight path from the mesquite tree on the left. You try to approximate the best you can the flight path to the perch that you've set up, a baited perch where the bird wants to go, a perch with some peanut butter. You hold your hand up, you send the guide out to hold your hand up where you want to focus your camera. You take your camera off autofocus, give it a little depth of field, like f11 at least. Shutter speed 2,500 or more for small birds. Set your camera in high-speed multi-shot. Don't track the bird. Leave it there. Put it on a tripod. Leave it focused in that one spot. The minute the bird twitches, you start shooting, often with a cable release, and the bird will fly through your pre-focused area. You'll have some empty frames at the beginning and the end, and often you will have focused birds in the frame in that middle shot. It doesn't always work. Now, this is how we used to do this a lot before cameras tracked movement as well as they do today. Here are some settings for plan A. You want your shutter speed 2,000 if you have to, but 2,500 or more is best. F11 is good. If you get a little wing motion, because these shutter speeds are not as high as you'd think for little tiny birds, you get a little wing motion, big deal. I like a little wingtip blur. But you do want the face to be focused, and honestly, that's the hard part. And then so you'll set the ISO to whatever gets you to these settings, to the shutter speed and the ISO that you want. Multi-shot. In Canon, it's called AS servo. That's the follow focus. In Nikon, it's called follow focus. Shoot wide and crop. Now, I know that there are purists who don't want to do this, but unless you have superhuman hand-to-eye coordination, you can shoot wide and crop. I shoot a camera which has 45 megapixels, so I can shoot wide. All right. Here's an example. This one flew right through the sweet spot and gave me a good shot. Okay, plan B, and this is more usual for today. It does require good hand-to-eye coordination and or practice. If you have kind of crummy hand-to-eye coordination like me, you have to practice, but I promise you, if I can do it, you can do it. My coordination is terrible. It requires the same fast shutter speed. You're going to open the aperture if you need to, and then, of course, sacrifice depth of field. And you're going to focus on the face. You're going to track it. You're going to hand hold. You're going to try to leave some space in front. Try to lead the bird. Try to lead the prey, as they say, with skeet shooters say. Modern cameras are much better at this than they used to be. And this is pretty much how everybody does it today. Most people do it by hand. You want to put it on a tripod? That's fine. You know, a nice loose tripod or a gimbal head's great. But mostly it's practice. Y'all, some of you Texans know Larry Ditto. I was really discouraged, and Larry Ditto told me that if I practiced that I could do it. And this was actually pretty significant for me. I didn't believe him, but he did. Big birds are easier to get in the frame. They fly more slowly. Go to the beach and practice on pelicans, and you'll get pelicans. That's the black and white pelicans. If you practice on pelicans, you'll get some shots that are satisfied because they'll be in focus and they'll be well framed. And if you're struggling with flight, try it. Try any slow bird, vultures. Let's talk about the aesthetics a little bit. You need some space in front of a flying bird. You need some energy. You need some space where the bird can fly into. You look at the focus, you look at the bird, you look at the subject, even if it's a dragonfly, and you try to find where the energy of the action is directed. Leave some space there. I see flight shots all the time that are just smack dab, bullseye, target center. It's terrible. If you shoot with a little asymmetry or crop, so the bird's a little out of center, you get a little dynamic tension. You get a feeling of activity that you just don't get for a bullseye centered photograph of any kind, but especially with an action shot. We call it the rule of thirds sometimes. It's a suggestion. It's the rule of thumb, thirds, 2/5. All it means is get your subject out of the middle of the frame, especially flight photos or active photos running. Now, flight photos for me include a lot of other wing up bird activities, taking off, landing, lifting off, chasing, all of those wing up things. Here's a titmouse taking off a cactus. I actually like these slightly awkward photographs, and I want to mention that when we're talking about symmetry and when I'm ranting about being slightly off center, I'm mostly talking about horizontal crops. Often a vertical crop will actually sustain a bit more symmetry, like this one. So every rule has its exceptions. Here's some flying animals. Here's a cardinal yelling at a brown-headed cowbird about the peanut butter. My peanut butter, not yours. The next one on the same slide is a South Texas bird, the bronzed cowbird, which has red eyes and all black plumage if you're a male. When they display, they do this crazy thing. They pick up vertically off the ground with their bodies vertical and kind of hover. And the minute this male sees a female during breeding season, it does that. And once, just once, for me, it did it in good light. I felt very lucky. This shot has a little bit of wing blur at the wing tips. I like that. Okay, here's wing up. I guess it's kind of a flight shot. It's just lifting up off the snow. It's a big bird, so you don't need that 2,500 shutter speed, 1/2500th of a second. And I didn't have the greatest light. You can see the sky is kind of cloudy. This is Alaska. It was bright, but somehow the light was kind of dim and I had to open the shutter all the way. You probably, I mean, I had to open the aperture all the way. You probably know that a lens is at its sharpest 1 or 2 stops down from the most open. And we hope that we get to shoot that way. Sometimes we don't, if the light won't allow it. And this camera, actually, I think I could have shot that way if I'd gone ahead and upped the ISO. Motion blur. I love motion blur. I wish more people shot it. You can slow the shutter speed in several ways. You can certainly just slow the shutter speed in manual mode. You can adjust the ISO to a low ISO. You can close down the aperture. Or you can shoot in bad light. Often in early morning light, especially like on a lek, on a breeding ground for those birds where the males all come together and show off, like greater prairie chickens, sage, grouse of various kinds. You have to get in the blind really early. And so you're sitting in the blind with nothing to do and there's not enough light. One thing you can do is shoot motion blur. I love motion blur. This is actually a good place to try shutter speed priority. A good beginning shutter speed for motion blur is between 1/30 and 1 minute. Just experiment. Most of your shots will not turn out, but it's really good when they do. A lot of people advise blur photographers to pan as we shoot. If you pan correctly, if you pan at the speed of the bird, and this is harder than it sounds, you'll get a head in better focus than the rest of the bird, which is kind of cool. A lot of people think it's not done right unless the head is in focus, but I disagree. I think the whole thing can be blurred, but that's just me. I'm an art major. This is extreme motion blur. I like it. It's abstract expressionist. This is 1/20th of a second, and I was panning, and the heads are a little more in focus than I would have expected from this. I got the ISO as low as possible, and I still had to stop down a lot to get to 1/20th of a second. This is something you can think about if you want to get artsy with your photos. Flight shots can be shot in groups, of course. Birds often fly in groups. Roseate spoonbills fly in groups. Cranes, sandhill cranes fly in groups. The best group shots for me have a little space between the birds, or at least their heads. I want to see all the heads. I don't want to see a head stuck up another bird's rear. It's nice if the front birds are focused. If you have to focus on just one plane of bird, try for the front. It's also nice if all the birds are in focus, and this will require a small aperture to get some depth of field or a little post-processing. Those half birds that are at the edges of the frame are almost impossible to avoid. I don't mind editing them out. I feel like these are my photos and I could edit them in any way. When you do that, you have to bear in mind that the photo is no longer a contest photo. Most contests don't allow you to take anything out that's in the frame. Group shots are a good time for motion blur. Group shots are a wonderful time for sunset silhouettes. This is a brown pelican with brown naughties trying to steal its prey. And I don't know why they do this because they never seem to get it. The pelican just puts the full bill under the water and sits there till the naughties get tired of it. You can see this in Port Aransas. You'll see the gulls harassing the pelicans. Same thing. I have yet to see a pelican actually give up its prey, but the gulls try. Pretty fast shutter speed for this. Oh, not 813, only f13. Medium ISO. Was shooting with a long lens and I cropped a bit. I like this photo. It has a lot going on. It has some diagonal lines, not too symmetrical. Interesting action. And here's that group shot I talked about that you can shoot in the evening. A silhouette. So group shots are great, make great silhouettes. I don't like silhouettes in which the subject is totally blacked out. I like to see a little content within the silhouette. You do it by exposing for the background and raising your ISO to what you need to freeze the action. This is kind of a classic. A lot of people who shoot sandhill cranes shoot these at sundown. You're there at dawn, you're there at sundown. Shoot some silhouettes. All right, this is what I was talking about before. You really want the heads to be separated. On the lower one, the rightmost sandhill has its head tucked up in behind another sandhill. It's just awkward. In fact, I actually think there are 1, 2, 3, 4 birds visible and 2 heads visible. All right, this one's more successful. 4 birds, 4 heads. These are big birds, so I don't need that super fast shutter speed that I called for. I shot these with 1,000, shutter speed of 1,000. I did up the depth of field a bit to try to get, I had good light, so I was at ISO 500. And I shot it with a 400 millimeter. So that means I probably cropped a bit. I was standing fairly close. I like the shot, more diagonals, kind of layers of interest and lots of splash. I love splashy shots. Hummingbirds are special. Now, there are several ways to shoot hummingbirds. You can certainly shoot just au naturel, no flash, no nothing. The more shutter speed you get, the more wing freezing you'll get. Though when you don't shoot remote flash or flash or otherwise flash, you usually don't freeze the wings because by the time the light is harsh enough to get super fast shutter speed, it's just too harsh to shoot. But all the usuals apply. Soft natural light, appropriate aperture, and shutter speed, and they're really fast moving, so you need the shutter speed. You need a lot of shutter speed. And when you apply a lot of shutter speed and you still get a little wing blur, great. What's wrong with ring blur? It shows motion. I like it. You can use a little fill flash if you like, especially if you're out in the middle of the day. You should know that the brilliant color in hummingbird feathers is structural. It's not a pigment. It's actually structures in the feather that reflect light so that we perceive it as iridescence. And what that means is that the iridescence doesn't show from every single angle. Especially that really bright gorget. Sometimes it's black. You know, from the side, it's just black. If you have hummers at home, just make a setup. Hang your feeder, and then wherever your feeder was, put a flower in there, and the hummingbird will come back to the same location and go, well, I guess the flower's gone. I guess the feeder's gone. I'll check out this flower. And what you can really do is suck up with a syringe some of the juice out of the feeder and fill the flower and fill it every time the hummingbird leaves, or the hummingbird will suck it up once or twice and leave. And then you can hang the feeder up for a little while again. But it is really easy to photograph them in your backyard, and any nursery will carry hummingbird plants. Often hummingbirds are shot with this very high-tech setup. This is called remote flash. It's often done in workshops because setting it up yourself is a real pain. And you have to have a lot of light stands and a lot of equipment. And if you're a gearhead, you'll love it. Yeah. It's tech heavy, but it is a lot of fun. Remote flash, the several remote flashes light the birds from several angles. So the iridescent usually shows. And this is done undercover with as little ambient light as possible, or the ambient light's kind of cut back. That means the flash is the primary light. The settings are such that you have to have flash to pick up the hummingbird, and the settings will not pick up the ambient light. Therefore, the flash speed is the shutter speed. The flash speed serves as the shutter speed, and those wings are frozen. There's an abundance of information on this. And if you go to almost any workshop in South America, Costa Rica, you might encounter this. It's a lot of fun. I work for Trogon Tours, and we do it in our Hill Country workshop in Fredericksburg, where they have black-ginned hummingbirds, and black-ginned hummingbirds. Okay, here's some random afterthoughts. Birds usually take off into the wind, and into the wind is not always on a nice light angle. Ducks can be induced to fly toward you with thrown corn. Silhouettes at sundown, we like that. Backlit flight, which this is in this slide, can also work very nicely. At South Padre Island on the Birdwalk at the Nature Center, if you go there when the tide's coming in the winter when there are a lot of ducks, the ducks are sitting out in the shallow water. But as the tide comes in, they pick up and fly overhead to more shallow water. And it's actually kind of nice. You can get the pickup and you can get the ducks flying overhead. It's great. But you have to watch the tide table. All right. If you can't freeze the wings, don't worry. I think I've said this. I like wing motion, in my humble opinion. You're free to disagree. I don't hear anybody chiming in disagreeing with anybody. I'm very disappointed. Do overexpose against the sky. If it's a dark bird, especially, about 2 stops. And you'll remember that a polarizing filter, which does cut the light, but it does intensify the sky color. The reason you have to overexpose against the light is that our eyes don't see the sky like the sensor does. The sky is very, very bright. It overwhelms the sensor, and the little computer in the camera is trying to turn everything into a neutral gray. So it's darkening the exposure in general. So overexpose. Go ahead and try it. You'll get a feel for it. Another high-tech bird, another high-tech way to photograph is laser trap. Ruth likes to do this. It's tech heavy, it's specialized, and it's kind of beyond the scope of this talk, but it's another thing that you can do in a workshop sometimes. My advice is shoot wide and be willing to crop. You know, the whole, it's not a good photograph if you're cropping. I just think that's baloney. That's purists talk that way, and I just can't get behind it. So we have cameras with a lot of megapixels this day, and mostly we shoot our pictures online where we're not seeing very many megapixels at all. Shoot wide, crop. Okay, flight photography. What can go wrong? Lots and lots. Practice, 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 practice. You know the joke about the way to Carnegie Hall. Small, fast birds are harder, of course. The faster they are, the harder they are. Flycatchers and dragonflies, however, will sit on a perch, sally out, and come back to the perch, which gives them a little predictability. It's nice. I personally feel, I strongly feel, that most photos are improved with some editing, some cropping, some sharpening, some improving the colors. Don't oversaturate. I see that all the time. Please don't oversaturate. A little saturation goes a long way. The reason I think that photos are improved, well, let me backtrack. You will hear now and then people say, that if you can't get it right in the camera, if you have to edit, then you've done it wrong. I strongly disagree. Our eyes and brain have 4 million years of evolution behind us. The image formed in your brain is not going to be captured by a camera sensor with 3 decades of engineering. It's just not going to happen. I will sit down with anybody and work with improving existing photos. I'm a big believer in post-processing. And you don't have to be a Photoshop expert. I mean, Lightroom is great. Okay, so let's talk about the things that go wrong. The number one problem is that we lose focus. Just keep shooting. Usually there's no good software solution for bad focus, but that may not be true in 5 years. In fact, focusing software has certainly improved during the time that I've been shooting. So sometimes if I have a bad photo, I'll keep it just to see if we'll do it any better. If you have a photo that you just can't give up, you just like it so much, but it's out of photos, it's out of focus, art it up. Just get into Photoshop art filters or anybody's filters, or there are a lot of ways to alter a photograph. There's websites on this. I think altered photos are a lot of fun, but I'm an art major. What can I say? Okay, bird at the end of the frame, edge of the frame. All right, in Photoshop, it is very easy to add canvas, and that would place this bird further to the left. Again, if you're a purist and you think this is cheating, do what's comfortable for you. And you certainly can't enter it into a contest, but it's your photo. If it's a photo for your website or for a customer or for a magazine editor, it's fine. This is done very commonly. Birds get their heads cut off at the edge of the frame, and there's a fix. You can copy and paste somebody else's head on it. I did this just to see how much trouble it was. It was a lot of trouble. It's not worth it. I think you just go out and shoot again. And then I would mention that these half-bird shots are great for graphics, slideshows. They could be used in a lot of things. You remember my cover shot has a bird just kind of down around at the bottom. I mean, my cover slide. I like it. I save these now, just because I like to do other graphics, note cards, brochures, stuff like that. Okay, here's what I see all the time. This is a very bland composition. And I do like the bare background, but here it is. It's just smack dab bullseye center of the frame. 9 out of 10 photo editors will agree with me. In fact, 99 out of 100 photo editors will agree with me. Get the bird out of the middle of the frame. Do a better crop. You know, this is better in my humble opinion. Not so humble opinion. I actually really believe this. It's still a little bland. I think the background's a little bland, but it's better because there's some tension. There's a little dynamic feeling of it might be actually going somewhere. Here's another sheet. This will not be a contest photo after you do this, but it's very common for group photo shots to have an awkward bird. Remove it. The, what is it called? Content aware fill brush, content aware edit brush in Photoshop is greatly improved. We used to have to clone these things out, but all kinds of removal tools are better than they used to be. Just crop it out. It's your photos. Do what you want. Here's one. See the awkward bird in the bottom? See how much better it is? Here's what I think. That's what I think. In-flight photos, wing position's very important. In any series of flight shots, there'll be some with what I think is an ugly wing position. I know some people like this one. This is not my favorite wing position. I'd rather I'd rather see wing up, or maybe further straight out in front. Just shoot lots, pitch the bad ones. Okay, here's a trick that we do at Laguna Seca Ranch. This feeder is a loaf pan and it's on a spring. So when the bird comes to it and tries to land, it swings a little bit and the bird will pick up and and fly above it. Sometimes I can get a shot without the feeder, but more often than not, the feeder's still in the shot and I have to clone it out. And if you're comfortable removing things, that's something you can do. This is very common, especially for me. Clipped wing tips can be rebuilt in Photoshop. We don't really have time to go into the details, but there's a lot of information online and it's not that hard. Or keep shooting and shoot the shot that doesn't clip the wing tips. Your choice. Okay. We've been talking about composition a bit, but I want to talk some more. I want to reiterate, wing position is really critical. You'll get to this stage where you can get a flight shot, and then you start getting really picky. Okay, I got a flight shot, but this one's good, that one's bad. And when you see a bad one, often is not, it's the wing position. I think you need space in front of a moving subject. I think a little asymmetry is good, rule of thirds, rule of 2/5. And all that means is get your subject out of the middle. It doesn't have to be exactly on the third or exactly on the golden mean or exactly on the what is that shell diagram, Avogadro's number thing, spiral that people put on top of their photo. Again, shoot wide and crop. That's what I have to do, unless you have superhuman coordination. And I know a couple of people who do. It's just horrible. You need a camera body with multi-shoot. You need a camera body with high ISO capacity because that will allow you to increase your shutter speed, especially in this day and age when ISO removal, noise removal software has really been improved. For bird photography, you need a long lens. Some extenders can help. You need a nice, sturdy, unfortunately heavy tripod that is stable. And you need a head on the tripod, which is very mobile. I really like Wimberley gimbals. I don't travel with mine because it's quite heavy, but I miss it when I don't have it. Many animals fly. The only mammal which exhibits true flight are bats. Now, I live in Austin. There are a million Mexican free-tailed bats under the bridge. I have yet to get a good photo. Oh, by the way, there are also fast-moving mammals, monkeys, rabbits, bobcats, wildebeest, flying squirrels, jumping monkeys, wild horses, and all of the flying action moving target nostrums apply to these other fast-moving mammals. But the only mammal which truly flies are bats. Bats are like hummingbirds. They can just be shot au naturel, and someday I'm going to get that bat photo out of underneath the bridge. But in the rainforest, they're a little more obvious. They come out at night to setups, and they can be photographed at night with a hand-triggered laser trap and other kinds of laser traps. They're real tech heavy. They do require a location with a reliable bat population that comes out and goes to the same place. Elephant Head in Arizona is one of those places because this guy has the only pond in a really wide distance. This is one of those things where you probably want to go to a workshop. If you're a gearhead, you might try this on your own. I think there's a lot of information online, or you can go learn in Arizona. if you go to South America, you might be in a workshop where bats are shot at night with kind of a variant on the way we shoot hummingbirds with remote flash. And I'm not even going to try to explain it. It's crazy. There is a wonderful bat cave near Concan, Texas called Frio Bat Cave. It's on private property. There's an entrance fee. And there are millions of bats that come flying out. He said there are like 3 million bats. There are Mexican freetails, I think, if I recall. The coolest thing about this cave is that there are hawks waiting for those bats. There's a red tail, and you can photograph the red tail in the sky, actually catching bats. It's amazing. I really recommend it. It's hot. When the bats are there, it's hot, but go. And then you can go to Concan, which is also a nice place to photograph birds and lots of other things. Once upon a time, I was in Trinidad at Asa Wright, and they had a lot of hummingbird feeders out, and they left them at night. Well, they're out for the hummingbirds in the day, but they stayed out at night because the bats came. So, my Brian and Austin gave me a recommendation for how to just photograph, and we used a speed light on manual, not ETTL, 1/16 flash power. Our cameras were set to ISO 800. I've forgotten what the shutter speed was, 1/60th, f13. And this is what we got. Now, this is another one of those shots where I did get a lot of free flying bats, and I had to, clone out the feeder. That's fun. This is the high-speed laser trap bat in Costa Rica, also fun. This is Arizona. That place is called Elephant Head. This is a high-tech laser trap. You set the camera, you set it to focus where the bat comes through and trips the laser. You leave your camera there, you give it a fresh battery, an empty card, you go home and go to bed. You come home the next day, your camera's full of bat shots. I'm not sure. I don't. Sometimes I think I'm not really sure I shot those. That somebody else shot those. The person who knew the tech shot those. But they were recorded in my camera, and it was a lot of fun. I keep trying to get a jumping monkey shot, and this is as close as I've gotten, but I want the face. Similar settings as flight. Insects make wonderful flight shots. And wasps, butterflies, bees. And I often shoot wasps lifting up off the pond at the ranch when I'm in the blind and the birds aren't there and it's getting hot and the wasps start giving me shots. The problem is often insects wait until the day warms up to fly. The light can be a little flash, a little harsh. As you know, fill flash can help with harsh light. Macro lenses, like long lenses, have a very short depth of field. But if you're shooting harsh light, you can stop down a bit and, get better focus. Just like birds, like other animals, you want to focus on the face, focus on the antenna. This actually is not shot with a macro lens. This is long lens macro. This is me sitting in the blind, I don't know, 10 feet away from the wasp, shooting with a 500 millimeter, I think, maybe 6. Anyway, they're beautiful little insects. They're mean, but they're beautiful. Bees are everywhere. It's one of those multi-shot things. If you have a bee hovering and going in and out of the flower, shoot fast multi-shot, and you'll get one outside the flower. I probably shot 15 or 20 shots in this series to get this. They're all wonderful subjects. Mid-morning to evening, fast shutter speed, small apertures. Try to maintain focus on the head again. There's a Canon 100 to 400 lens. There's also a new Canon 200 to 500 with a particularly short minimum focusing distance. So there's this, like telephoto lens, long lens, and you can get up close to the bee. It's amazing. And I like it for insects a lot. I also like the 180 millimeter Canon macro lens with a tube. Oh, and a tube, by the way, is something with no glass. It's just electronics to transfer information between the lens and the body. You put it between the lens and the body, and it shortens the minimum focusing distance so that you can get closer to an insect. I almost always have a tube on my macro lenses. It will cut the light just a bit, so you lose that wide open. If your wide open is 10, your wide open is going to jump to, if your wide open is 8, it's going to jump to 10 or something like that. Okay, butterflies, all usual. Shoot the best light you can find, fast shutter speed. Depth of field is important, though I'm going to say again, when the rear wing is out of focus and there's some blur on the tips of the moving wing, I'm okay with that. Butterflies are in flowers and flowering bushes, and sometimes they go inside and they get lost in the inside of the bush, and you can get a lot of ugly cast shadows. So you just have to wait and have quick fingers, be there when they're ready. And again, like all insects, they're little tiny cold-blooded animals. They don't generate heat. They work on ambient heat. So they have to collect enough sunlight heat, solar heat, and warm up before they can begin to move around. Then they move around really fast. Butterflies are available to photograph in public gardens, private gardens, out in the wild. Here in Austin, we have Ladybird Johnson Garden. We have the Zilker Gardens, the Zilker Butterfly Garden. All those fancy public flower gardens, they're gorgeous. Same story, get some space in front of them because they're flying. This is an African swallowtail called a flying handkerchief. Again, I love lens blur. So this is kind of a happy accident. I actually didn't make this happen, but I like it when it does happen. Dragonflies. Dragonflies, as I said, are like flycatchers. Some of them will perch. They'll fly out, catch something, and fly back to the same perch. And so you can catch them flying in. This is a mesquite perch that I put out there. I don't know why. Roseate skimmers like mesquite perches. I mean, it seems like a perch would be a perch, but no. It's really easy to set up. You make this little gizmo. All of this is a little bit of concrete or plaster of Paris in a takeout container. I think this was a plastic container that had salsa. And then you put something tubular. This is a little piece of PVC pipe in it so that there's an open tube. And then it's heavy enough to be stable. And you just put it in the shallow part of a pond, and you clip a stick and stick the stick in the top of it. The holder is very stable. It's hidden, and the stick is out, sticking up from the water where the birds are hunting around. Super easy. There it is. I made it myself. This is a carmine skimmer at Laguna Seca Ranch. Go into a little perch just like that. It has red soil behind it, and I love that color combination. This is an African dragonfly. I should know the name, but I have forgotten. Here are some 4-spot dragonflies mating in copula in the air. Dragonflies are gorgeous anytime, any place. And that, folks, is pretty much all I have to say until we go to the next slides, which are just kind of random slides for us to discuss. I wonder if you have any questions.
Okay. I haven't seen any questions, but this is a good opportunity for people to put those in the chat if you do. So, and I'll watch for that.
Okay.
We'll share your
Let's just
contact
talk about this. This is a tarantula hawk. It's related to bees and wasps, and it will sting the holy hell out of you, especially if I think it's males that sting. it will actually paralyze a spider and drag it to its burrow. They're beautiful. They're truly beautiful. They're iridescent. This was photographed in Mission in South Texas at the Butterfly Garden, which is one of the very best places to photograph almost anything. Birds, audubons, orioles, butterflies, of course, and lots of other insects, spiders. Lots of spiders are there. There's some Altamora orioles. There's audubon's orioles. They have some sort of pet turtle that it's a big tortoise of some sort that lives in a little container. You can photograph it. We talked about sandhill cranes. I photographed a lot of them. I don't know if you've been to Bosque del Apache. It's actually driving distance from Austin. I think it's maybe 12 hours, something like that. In the very center of New Mexico, it's a national wildlife refuge, and it is stuffed to the gills with photographers in November because the sandhill cranes are coming through. If the ponds are being managed properly. And I don't know about you guys, we always whine about the feds a lot, but I gotta say, I think Bosque del Apache National Wildlife Refuge does a good job. You can line up next to the water and watch the birds go through. You will look down and it's like that lineup at the edge of a football game. There are 200 photographers with $10,000 in equipment each lined up to photograph the cranes. It's amazing. And fun and kind of fun and cold.
It is. It is cold. I was just going to
Yeah,
say
it's cold. But it's worth it.
It's a lot of fun.
Those quilted hunt suits that hunters wear to go out, and it's kind of a one-piece thing. It's great.
Mhm.
That's what I wear there. I'm warm as toast. I look like a Michelin man in camo, but I'm warm.
Got some questions if you're up for some.
Sure.
Okay. Okay. So I've got
Back to you.
a couple of questions lined up here.
Okay.
Gail's question is, you mentioned changing ISO higher to be able to shoot high f-stop and fast shutter speeds.
That's right.
What about using auto ISO?
I have been experimenting a lot with auto ISO. It used to be before cameras tolerated high ISO and before we had good noise reduction software. For those of us who don't mind post-processing, auto ISO would take you this outrageous ISO and your pictures were just trash. But now, so I didn't shoot that way. But now I have learned how to set the limit on the upper ISO. I think I didn't know how to do that before. And our cameras are better at high ISO. I've shot 8,000 ISO and then I've put it through DxO plus Topaz noise removal, and I've got pictures that are just fine. Now, the assumption here is that you're willing to post-process. I like to post-process. I'm a nerd. I like computers. But if you don't want to post-process much, then ISO 8,000 may be more trouble than it's worth for you. At this point, I'm shooting manual with auto ISO, and I started it as an experiment, but I like it. I think I'm going to stick with it for a while, until I find a better way. Because it certainly allows me to adjust my shutter speed to get the high shutter speeds I need for flight. Does that make sense?
It did to me.
Did I answer the question?
I think you did, but if she didn't, Gail, come back in and
okay.
I'll
back to me again.
Yeah, so I'm gonna get you. I know you're using two computer screens, but now I'm seeing the side of your face. So look at the other screen. There, perfect. Okay. I'll try not to trip you up with these questions.
All right.
Todd's got two questions in here, but this first one is he's curious, how many tours do you lead a year and where are your favorite destinations?
I lead about 2 tours a year with Trogon Tours. well, 2 tours, but there may be more than one session per tour. Well, we're combining 2 tours. So in the past, I've led 3. I go to Galveston during migration. I go to South Texas. We go to Laguna Seca Ranch and a couple of other places. And then we have worked up a West Texas tour. I believe we're going to combine, well, I know we're going to combine the South Texas and the West Texas tour into a more comprehensive tour. My favorite place to shoot, boy, I have so many. Ah, what is that island in Canada where you shoot northern gannets? I love that place. Can't remember his
Oh, I
name.
don't.
I like
Yeah, I
West
don't.
Texas a lot. I love South Texas. It's like my second home. I love Laguna Seca Ranch, which is a photo ranch. You pay to shoot there. You can go on a tour or you can go by yourself as an individual. There are a handful of photo ranches scattered around South Texas. Laguna is my favorite. Um, Outside the United States, I have to mention Costa Rica. You know, Ruth Hoyt has a tour in Costa Rica. I'll plug Ruth's tour. Um, Costa Rica is a wonderful place to shoot, and it's a wonderful place, period. The people in Costa Rica don't seem to be sick of tourists, and they're really nice to us. It's great.
And
Um,
it's easy to get to. It's not that hard of a trek
yeah,
from
that's
Texas.
right. That's exactly right. Costa
You know,
Rica is
my
fantastic.
friends in Michigan are probably going, wait a minute, but it's an easy trip from
No,
Texas. So
you'd be surprised. The food's good. The people are nice. The birds are fantastic, as they are also in Ecuador. Ecuador is the center of species diversity for hummingbirds, which is to say, we think that it's reasonable to think that hummingbirds evolved beginning in Costa Rica, in Ecuador. There are astounding hummingbirds in Ecuador, also in Colombia. Colombia is a fantastic place to go, and it used to have a reputation for being unsafe, but it's 50 years ago. I went, I came back, I'm fine. um, I thought it was safe. Let's see. I haven't photographed much in Europe or Asia. I have photographed some in Africa. I thought Uganda was incredible, which I mean, you don't think of when you think of bird photography in Africa, you don't think of Uganda, but it is. I also, in Kenya, I mean, come on, the Masai Mara. If you can go, go. The Masai Mara is incredible. And the avifauna, the birds of Africa, are amazing. It's just not something we think of. We think of mammals. You think of going to the Masai Mara and photographing giraffes and hippos and hippopotamus and lions and cheetahs. But the birds are incredible. I mean, the mammals are incredible. The elephants are incredible, but the birds are incredible too. So Africa's huge. I don't know. I don't know how to generalize about it, but um, Uganda and Kenya both were just astounding. Um, but if for less, I think the biggest bang for your buck is Central America, South America. It's expensive to go to Africa. It's expensive while you're there. And it takes a long time to get there. You got to go a day early so that because you're going to be exhausted when you get there. The plane ride's miserable. And so really, I if if somebody's kind of new to bird travel, go to Ecuador, go to Costa Rica. It's great. I really don't have enough good things to say about both those places.
perfect. Question from Kevin. Do you ever use spot metering for birds in flight? He says, I'm
Okay.
thinking cases when the camera tries to
Yeah.
turn a bright sky into 18% gray.
Okay. Um, there are several schools of thought on shooting manual. The purists shoot 100% manual. They set the ISO. And the old school purists do use spot metering and manual. This is a whole lecture. And frankly, anybody else would be better at giving this lecture than me. But what they do is they spot meter and they have a good eye for what is neutral gray. So they'll spot meter on tree bark or green grass or something that they know to be close to neutral gray. And then they exposure compensate for the situation. A dark bird against a pale sky, a pale bird against a dark background, or a pale bird against a white sky. All the situations that call for exposure compensation. Something on the snow, you need to exposure compensate up a couple. I know a guy that's an expert on this, and his exposures are almost perfect more times than not. He's much better. But he's been doing this particular spot metering method for decades. He's a really incredible photographer's guide at Truck on Tour, Ken Archer. If you want to learn that, I'll put you in touch with Ken Archer. I do it differently, and I think that many photographers are not doing it that way because now we have a far better visualization in our camera of what the exposure that we're seeing. When we use mirrorless camera and we're not seeing through the lens, we're seeing video or something. I don't know what we're seeing, but we're seeing the exposure as it's set. You can set your exposure, your metering to evaluative metering if you wish. And that's what I do. And it's been working for me. So I'm not going to promote a particular school of thought. If you are a spot meter, if you're a manual photographer who's having good luck with spot meters, keep it up or keep practicing till you're pleased with it. I don't, it's not in me to, really recommend something that's already working. There's always lots of ways to do things in tech. And I hope that answers the question. I shoot manual with auto ISO and evaluative metering. I am also not above shooting aperture priority or shutter speed priority if I think it's applicable. I even think P mode has its uses. When my husband wants to shoot something, I'll put my backup camera on P mode, and I'm always surprised. He actually will pull down some well-exposed photos. So there you have it. Yeah, use P mode if you're just confused and frustrated. Get something on P and get your bearings.
Yeah, that's great advice. Last question. This is from Todd, and thanks for asking it, Todd. He wants to know, can you share a little on how you got into photography?
Oh, sure.
There's more. Did the art or the bird photography come first?
The art came first. My bachelor's is fine arts. I went to graduate school later in life to make the world safe for the golden cheek warbler and got a master's. I worked for the city of Austin as an endangered species biologist connected to the Balcones Canyonlands Conservation Plan. During my time there, the paradigm shift to digital occurred. Prior to that, we shot with film, and honestly, I haven't shot that much film because I didn't want to set up a darkroom. I didn't want to fool with the chemicals. It just didn't do much for me. But because I worked for an underfunded endangered species program, I did the graphics. I learned Photoshop, and when the paradigm shift occurred, it suddenly occurred to me, oh, photography without a darkroom. I think I'll buy a camera. And at some stage, our film camera had kind of gone to pot. It had passed its sell-by date. And we got a new director. He had a personal interest in photography, and he sent some staffers out to buy one of them newfangled digital cameras. And we were all fighting over who was going to take it out that day. And we shot the kind of record-keeping shots we always had to shoot. Here's where the bikers broke through the fence. Here's where there was a wreck and the phone pole is down. Here's where we need to do some fire control, yada, yada. Um, but also we started to shoot pretty things. We started to shoot butterflies, birds. And about that time we got a website. I was in charge of the website. And so I made a gallery of the nice wildlife that was available for if you wanted to hike in the preserve. And we put insects and birds and plants and all kinds of fun stuff up there, shot with this kind of high-end point and shoot that we were shooting with. So I got tired of uh, having to share the camera, so I bought the next model of that one on my own. And at that point, I was hooked. And then I bought a real point and shoot. I mean, a real camera. I bought an SLR. I bought a Canon 30D. That's probably 20 years ago. I still have that little Sony point and shoot. It works. You put a battery, the thing works great. The 7-year-old neighbor shoots with it sometimes. It's my little kid friend. So then I got an SLR and I went with Canon because I knew a couple of local photographers who shot Canon and they could help me as I needed it. I do feel that all camera manufacturers make great equipment. If you're a Canon shooter, you're going to shoot great photos. If you're a Sony shooter, you're going to shoot great photos. I've certainly seen lots of good photos from OM and Fuji. It's not the equipment, it's learning to use it. So I shoot Canon and I don't chase equipment. I'm probably going to stick with Canon. I'm tempted by Sony now and then, but I started with Canon. I think I'll stick with it. But that's how it came about. I was kind of predisposed to make pictures from my art background. I started shooting digital at work. And now that I've retired, I basically travel, keep house, take care of my husband, and shoot pictures. So,
Sounds like a perfect day.
yes. Well, anyway, I hope you guys have some more questions. I'm really disappointed that nobody disagreed with anything I said. Honestly.
I'm not going to, one of the things you said, and now I can't remember the thing. I mean, it was like there's a phrase it was in the chat too, because you were quoted in the chat, and I can't remember what it was. But art is I can't remember. But when you say art it up, that's exactly what it was. I feel like that should be a bumper sticker or some kind of sticker.
Yeah, I do. I think I should put it. I think I should make a label and stick it on my camera, along with "Don't forget to chip."
Don't forget to chip.
And don't get so excited that you lose track of your settings.
I've done that. I've done that. And
me too.
And the photos that I did that on are still the two of my most favorite photos where I didn't have the right settings and I had to
Not me.
art
I
it
look
up.
at that photo and think, what were you thinking? You know that 1/800 will never shoot that much action.
No, but you get caught in the moment, and sometimes that's not a bad place to be.
Well, I don't know. If you're in the blind and a bobcat shows up, you want to be really still. Don't start jumping up and down and shouting. Look, there's a bobcat. That's the bobcat will jump up and go away. Look, there's a coyote. Oh my God, there's a coyote. It's coming our way. That's when the coyote turns around and says, nope. You can have a butt shot.
No. No, but it was a delight to meet you. I've heard so many nice things.
Well, you're friends with my buddy Ruth.
I know, and friends cheer other friends on, and she certainly has had some beautiful words to say about you. And she couldn't come tonight because she's actually doing a presentation for some other groups.
I'm doing another one tomorrow. I don't understand why they come in clusters like this.
It's tis the season. We got to catch you while we can. In
Yeah.
fact, I it took me quite a while to get you on to the schedule. So I'm
Well,
I'm
that's
glad
because I'm traveling. And in fact, I'm going to
that's
go to
right.
Alaska in a couple of days. I can't wait.
That's okay.
Oh,
That's
I should
fine too.
mention that.
Go
That's
ahead, go
another one of
ahead.
my very favorite places to photograph. It is so wonderful. Eagles are like trash birds. And unfortunately, there are no good flights from Texas to get there, but um, I don't know why that is. We have to write a strongly worded letter to the design committee for flights.
You get all over that because I would like to go to Alaska one day, and you're right.
Go,
It's
go, 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 go. It's
not easy.
expensive because they have to haul everything in, but oh, the birds are so good. And they've got all these weird birds that we don't have in Texas. Ptarmigans? We don't have ptarmigans. I never see ptarmigans in my backyard.
No,
So,
but they
anyway,
are cool birds. All right, let me close down this session. I want to thank you for coming. And you don't know me, and for you to say yes to me, that was really sweet. I don't know if Ruth twisted your arm or not, and I don't care. I
no,
got you.
no, no.
And I was glad to have you, and I so appreciate your time. All
I
right,
just love the sound of my own voice. You can ask me anything.
me too. Me too.
No, Ruth said do it, and I always find that Ruth has good advice.
She does. She does. And she will be the first to get us in trouble one day. All right, next week, Don Simpson returns to the Happiness Hour to share his presentation, The Poetry Within. Until next time, go out and create something beautiful. And I hope that we see you again soon.